My name is Christine A.R. Illichman. I'm the Communications and Engagement Coordinator for the School of Information Sciences at Wayne State. These lunchtime events are something that we have begun to try, and next month we will be doing one on February 21st with Holly Hibner and Mary Kelly of Awful Library Books discussing professional development. I will not do a lengthy introduction of our panelists, our lead panelist and faculty member, but I will allow them to introduce themselves quickly. So Dr. Zhang, I will let you take it away, your introduction about their work.
Thank you, Christine, for organizing this, and thanks, Jody, for helping out the technical issues. I found the Adobe Connect is functioning funny. I did it just the last week. I was successful, but today it still took me quite a few steps to get connected. Anyway, my name is Xiaoming Zhang. In case some of you who I never met before, I'm currently an associate professor in the school. A little bit about my background. I did library and information science in my for my bachelor's study, and I studied information retrieval for my master's degree. And then I did my PhD in University of Toronto High School with a concentration on HCI, human-computer interaction. So naturally, my research has been focused on user interactions with information searching issues. Regarding my teaching at the school, I teach courses in this area as well, such as HCI, web design, and information architecture. I know some of you have taken my courses. Some of you may not have taken yet. I know Laura, who's going to also speak today. She did not because she graduated, earlier than I came back. But I know Laura has been doing an exciting job, and Laura has gracefully lectured a year ago in my IA class as a guest lecturer. So I really, and also students really appreciated that. So I'm more or less know the panelists a little bit, but the audience may not. So would each of you, Laura, Maria, and Ben, would you mind to introduce yourself a little bit? Just briefly about your background and your current affiliation. I will have some professional or job-related questions for you guys to discuss a few minutes later. Do we have an order to introduce yourself? Hello?
Hey, I can go first. This is Maria.
All right, go ahead, Maria.
Can everyone hear me? Is my volume okay? Okay, great. So my name is Miranda, and I actually just graduated last month, which was exciting. And I'm currently a member of the 5-person web team in Discovery Services, which is the library department here at Wayne State that handles databases, our ILS, and the library website, among other things. So I'm in charge of doing usability and accessibility research and tracking any improvements that we do make. So I started as a graduate student assistant in this job and was lucky enough to be kept around. And I guess whoever is next can go next. I'm going to mute my mic.
Is Laura or Ben? Can you speak now?
We're still working on getting Laura up and running at the moment. Sorry.
Okay. Is Ben available?
It looks like Ben actually needs mic access.
Who? Ben?
Yeah, it looks like Ben doesn't have microphone access.
Ben said yes. Well, can you go ahead? Briefly introduce yourself.
He'll get mic access. He should have it now.
Oh.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay,
I
great.
can hear
Hi,
you.
my name is Ben Noble. Perfect. I am graduated from Wayne State, obviously, master's in instructional design. Currently going through the user experience graduate certificate. I am the training lead at Ford Motor Company, and I've been working in their training department since 2012, working on global deployment of training across various regions. And my primary responsibility is to develop training, create learning portals, update and maintain training, and we use various multimedia to accomplish that. So at a high level, that's me.
Great. I think Ben does have lots of practical experience in this field. I mean, in terms of user experience. So that's a very valuable experience. So we can wait a few seconds for Laura to make her microphone work. Okay, let me just very briefly talk a little bit about user experience as a field. In the meantime, we give Laura a little bit of time to see whether or not she could get her microphone work. User experience field has become hot in recent years. Prior to the term, what we call the user experience field, initially the very popular field area actually is the general area, what we call the human-computer interaction, HCI. HCI is a very broad area. Many fields or disciplines contribute to the field, like computer science, like information science, like psychology. So many fields put together formed what we call the human-computer interaction discipline. Then gradually, when web became dominant on the internet, more and more information has been freely accessible. So information access issue becomes critical, particularly on the website design perspective. Then we had information architecture, which was popular in the, I think, around the first 10 years of this century, which emphasizes how to frame or design a website to make the information easy to find, easy to access. Then in recent years, when we are dealing with information architecture issues, we found actually more and more we want to make the user happy. The user needs to find the information. That came to the words user experience. The user experience today, most of the time, is used with user experience design. If you look at the job titles or the description of the fields, most of the time you would see the term user experience design. Of course, design is very important, but don't forget that behind the design, we have to do research, user experience research, in order to support user experience design. Is Laura available now? Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that Laura?
Yay!
Oh,
Yes, I'm not sure what button
okay.
I picked, but it worked. Yay!
Yeah, catch on. Introduce yourself.
Yay! Hi, I'm Laura Evans. I currently work at 4C. We're the company that does the pop-ups. Hey, what do you think of our computer? I am a graduate of Wayne State, and I believe I graduated in 2011, hence why I haven't taken your classes. At the time that I graduated, I believe there was only one usability class at Wayne State, so I had to look further afield to get some education. And I actually went to Washtenaw Community College, and I got a certificate there. That certificate, combined with my library background, allowed me to actually have the job at 4C. It was a really nice mix because the usability is very much about organizing data, and I had that from the library background. Actually, in my department, I work in one of, I believe there's 17 of us right now, and about a third of us are librarians and have library backgrounds. There is one thing you should know. I am currently at 4C, but within 2 weeks, I am actually moving to Quicken Loans downtown, and I'll be moving specifically into user research. This occurred in between this being set up, so it was a fairly recent thing.
Oh, that's nice. Closer to the school.
Yes, much closer. I'll be downtown again.
Yeah.
It'll be exciting.
Okay, you guys, I mean, Maria, Ben, and Laura, you guys are representatives of now graduates who work in the user experience field. So your experience, your knowledge and skills are very should be very much appreciated if you could share with current students. So because you have already started your career in the field, I have some questions. I hope you can share your view and your opinions, your experience with our audience. I have we know you're currently doing jobs on user experience. Can you tell us what project or projects specifically are you currently involved in and what's your role in the projects? So basically, what do you do now with the user experience project?
What order should we go in?
I think who's ready to go ahead, if we can just go ahead.
Yeah, I could just go first.
Yeah.
Again, this is Maria, and like I said before, I work for Discovery Services at Wayne State Libraries, and basically my role in my job is to, run usability tests and do research, and also communicate between the needs of users like students and librarians and anything that's going on with the web team. So we have a few long-term projects at the moment, and actually a big one that we recently finished up. So I will talk about that one first. And I'm actually going to share my screen really quick just to show you guys a little bit of what we've been doing. I'll make it quick though. Oh, well, let's see. It's making me download something.
It's working.
See if this works. Hey, can you guys see this?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm just gonna go through this very quickly. Let's see. So yeah, the first project we did was library.wayne.edu, and in October 2016 we rolled out our first handful of improvements to the homepage. But this is what it looked like before we started testing. So this is from August 2016. We identified a few trouble spots, like the menu button up in the right-hand corner and the quick links under the search bar. They weren't really, visible to people. So this was, let's see, this was the first handful of improvements we made, and you can see the menu button has been modified. The quick links, below the search box are a little bit more prominent, and then as you'll see on the next slide, we also added a full navigation to the footer to help orient users if they're looking for something. So after a few more rounds of testing, we received feedback and decided to add a sign-in button to the navigation, which you can see up there. And then we also added drop-down arrows to both buttons to better signify that there are more options underneath both of them. So this is the most recent version that we released in 2017, and it's actually had a couple tweaks since then. But because of user feedback, we removed the news stories from below the search box, and we also incorporated them into the image slideshow to decrease information overload on the page. So another area that we made changes to was our Ask a Librarian page, which is a point of access for our 24-hour chat reference, among other services. And this is the page pre-usability testing, and chat was accessible via hyperlink, but as you can see, it's the fourth one listed on the page under Instant Message Us. So we found that people had trouble finding it. This is the first iteration that we did of changes, and we moved it to the top, and we added a chat box, but we got feedback on that and found out that students actually didn't realize that they could type into that chat box. They thought it was an image. So we changed it to this with a button. So when the user clicks the button, the chat box pops up in a new window. And actually, since the change was made, there's been a 70% increase in the use of chat reference, so we knew that it was an improvement. The next thing we did was redesign the library catalog, and it hadn't been updated in almost a decade. And again, we used user feedback to tailor our design. So I'm just going to go through a quick overview of a quick refresher of what it looked like before and what it looks like now. So this was what it looked like before. This was the main page that you got to when you clicked on catalog, and the layout was really out of date. like I said, it hadn't been updated in about a decade, and a lot of features were pretty counterintuitive. So here's the main page. Here is the results page for when you do a search, and this is the record page. So a lot of stuff was hard to find. Students couldn't figure out how to request books. You can see in the top menu ribbon, it says Get It, which is actually how you requested items, and that was hard to find. Couldn't find the Melcat features or the WorldCat features, and it was just kind of ugly also. So I am actually going to show you what it looks like now. This is the new version of the catalog that we have, and the branding matches the regular site now, and it's a lot better. I am going to just do a quick search and show you what the results page looks like. We made everything bigger. We made the buttons more prominent, and I think the layout in general is just a lot more clean. As you can see, the buttons up here are more prominent, and besides that, it has all the same functionality. I'll just click on a record, and we made the image right here larger. We have these options: locate item, shelf view, cite this, right here, and then also echoed in the features sidebar right here. And then, advanced features here. So it's a lot better. We integrated the map view with the actual page too. So, users can just scroll down and access it like that. So that's all I have to show you for right now. But I guess besides this stuff, right now I'm mainly focused on improving the accessibility of, both the library homepage and the catalog for users with visual impairments. So we've already made a lot of improvements, like using ARIA tags and a skip navigation feature, so the architecture is more intuitive when they access it using a screen reader, but we still do have a long way to go. So that's what we've been working on. And I guess I will hand it off to whoever's going to go next.
Thank you, Maria. Wonderful. Exciting job. What's coming next?
I can go next. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I don't have anything to share, but in my current role, I am wearing multiple hats. I am a team lead, instructional designer, blended with some UX design principles, right? So currently I'm working on 3 global multi-year training initiatives that support more than 18,000 users. So the 3 different training initiative represents our CAD users, our CAE users, and then a new system that we're rolling out to help support what we call systems engineering. And we've been working on this effort since 2015, 16. And we expect we have 6 months rollout of the application and the training. So, and what I try to do, although I'm not a UX designer, I do strive to apply some of the fundamentals to the projects based on the learnings from the user experience courses that I've gone through, plus based on my my master's studies in instructional design. So by trade, I'm a trainer, and I'm actually in my ideal job developing and conducting training. So, but I do find that there's a lot of overlap between being an instructional designer and designing training, so that you maximize the training for the learner. So I do find that there's a lot of overlap between the two. And that's, at a high level, that's the projects that I'm working on in my role.
Ben, when you do training, do you actually teach the trainees the user experience principles, or how to how to say, how to enable them to design better products, or how to enable them to be more productive users?
So when I attack training, I follow a lot of principles, and again, they overlap. They overlap between the instructional design fundamentals and what I've learned in UX, right? So let's go for an example, what we call the Miller's Law, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the magic number, 7 plus or minus 2.
Right,
And
right, yeah.
right, so that deals with chunking information into manageable bite size of units. And the reason why you want to manage information in this way is because we have a finite working memory. And
Right.
so designing the training so that you maximize this finite working memory is one of the key concerns. The other thing that I try to do when I do training is I try to build the training on the long-term working knowledge memory that's already there. So I try to create motifs or themes to string along and connect the learning with what the user already knows. And what I find that seems to be, no matter what type of design work that you do, if it is website design or training design, some of the basic Gestalt principles, laws of proximity, similarity, connectedness, but the one that I focus on more so is what they call closure and common regions. And so this is the tendency for human beings to try to make closure or try to close the gap. And so if you design training in your website so that users are forced to connect the patterns or make closure, it makes the training, it makes the website a little bit more interesting, and it actually sticks and influences learning. So those are some of the key UX design principles that I use along with instructional design.
Excellent. I think this relies a lot on the user experience research, from the theories in human-computer interaction, like cognitive capabilities, memories, things like that. Excellent. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Interesting. So this is Laura.
Yeah.
I am the third one. What I do is very different from the other two presenters because 4C collects so much data in those surveys, and you'd be shocked at how many people answer them. I start my evaluations from the point of view of having a lot of data already. This means that I don't have to go out and test the users necessarily because I already know what they're thinking and where the problems lie on the site. And what happens is that clients actually hire us. They put the survey on the site. They figure out what's wrong, for instance, navigation, or they can't log in, or they can't find products. And then it comes to my department, and we write heuristic evaluations on the site. We do this, they've collected over the years a database of what we call indicators, and they're really just best practices, things that we know, they work. And whenever I start on a website, I will actually go through a checklist of upwards to 80 of these indicators. That really helps me zero in on what's going on, what granularly is happening, and what could make the site better. For instance, we know over the years that breadcrumb trails are used far more than we ever imagined. They're the little words up in the top left corner that are clickable that tells you where you went, by the way. And not only do I look to see if they have breadcrumbs on the site where they're appropriate, then I also see how they're actually implemented. Is the last element unlinked so that the person knows they're in that page? Is there a way that that last element is shown to indicate that it's on the page? And it goes on and on like that. we tend to zero in on very specific aspects of a site just because our analysis is so granular. It would be difficult to evaluate a whole site unless it's smaller. Small meaning like 5 pages, and we don't have many clients that small. But once I have all this data, then I write up these detailed reports which are presented to the client. I work with pretty big named companies. One of my favorite clients is MD Anderson. They're the leading cancer hospital in the nation. More recently, I've been working with NFL, trying to move them down to, or trying to show them how to better present their products. We do 2 other things as well. One is that these surveys, if somebody clicks on it and if the client has purchased the product, we can actually recreate what they did on the site. So it's almost like looking over somebody's shoulder individually to see what they're actually doing on the site. And those reports are put together generally separately, but we can actually go in and say, okay, they're not finding this link on the page. They're not clicking on here. For instance, MD Anderson, we had comments about people having a hard time finding the portal, their portal. And when we looked at the replay, people were looking at the page and not seeing that, and it was up in the utility nav, the top right, but they're just not finding it. And that's where my evaluation comes in. It was a very dark text on dark background, and the font was not very explicit. So watching people on the page not finding it, I could put the 2 together. They increased the size of the text, they increased its visibility, and now with the data, we figured out that people are now finding it. Those are somewhat more simple examples that we do, but we can get fairly nuanced. More recently, our clients have been asking us to actually do user testing, and that's just something that we have just started on and started to do. I did a project with a small pool supply company. They really wanted to know who was on their site and who was using it. And the reason why they wanted to know this is they're a B2B customer, business to business. But they were finding, what we found in our data was that the end users was actually using the site. And they're just really curious what happened to their B2B customers. Who's using it, and what are they doing on the site? And that's not something that we could find in our data because they're not answering our surveys. And that is something that we're in the process of testing. We had to do it by using their direct customers, asking them to get on a call with us so we could talk to them. And what we're finding is that most of them are fairly well satisfied with the site, which means that they're very familiar with it. So, and I think that summarizes what I do. I should mention that these reports that I've been writing over the last 3.5 years, we do them very rapidly. I can write upwards either 3 or 4 reports each month, which is one of the reasons why actually I started looking somewhere else, because you can only write so many heuristic evaluations before it's time to do something a little more challenging. Do you have any questions about it?
Laura, you just mentioned at the beginning you use a checklist to zero in the problems. Is that checklist? Is it a standard checklist, or did you guys develop that checklist yourself?
The company developed it, and it's an ongoing process. We're constantly updating it because the web is constantly changing. It was started, I think, 6 or 7 years ago, and it's something that there's a committee that actually in my group that works on it, and then we submit ideas. Any of us can submit ideas to it, and then they rate it up, and then that's the new checklist. There's probably, I think there's like 1,300 indicators, and what we do is we put them together for each type of audit that we do. For instance, checkout is its own set of indicators. where if we were looking at a home page and some primary landing pages, that would be another, but some of those indicators may overlap.
Thank you. Christine, I have a logistic question. Because we were delayed a little bit, do we still stick to the close at 1 p.m. or? Hello, Christine? She probably is away. Let's just go ahead. I noticed that each of you mentioned some methods you have used in your project. Do you have favorite methods or tools in your projects, like we learned in school? Things like a card sorting. Laura mentioned the survey. That's the most commonly used method. Like card sorting, like usability testing, like the wireframes to design websites. You guys have your favorite methods or tools?
Hey, I can start off with that. Here at Wayne State, most of the research we conduct is very, very lean. When we're working on a project, we do usability testing for an hour once a week. So basically, as a team, we come up with a set of questions and we set up in the undergraduate library here on campus with a bowl of candy. And from there, pretty much all we do is approach people and just briefly explain what we're doing and ask for 5 or so minutes of their time. And if they agree, we run through the tasks. We then repeat the test with generally 5 users during our session. And it might seem like a small amount, but it's actually enough to reveal about 85% of all usability problems, according to some research that Jacob Nielsen did in the early 90s. And he's a pretty well-respected usability expert. And there's actually a quote from a conference talk he gave over a decade ago where he said basically, everyone should be doing what he calls simple user testing, like debugging or, refining a design, while professionals should be doing things that require more skill and experience, like quantitative tests. And yeah, I see that question. So when we're doing the user testing, we are taking notes. We use Google Forms to take notes. And then, after we run the test, we camp out and, figure out what changes we're going to make before we, retest the following week. So I'm in charge of running these tests as well as devising the questions generally and keeping an eye out for any other bugs that we might not catch during testing. So in addition to user testing like this, we also track website usage using Piwik, which is an open source web analytics program, and then use that data to influence our design. So sometimes in addition to taking notes using Google Forms, we will also use a screen capture program. There are a couple good free ones out, so then we can review it later. So we're actually hoping to start this method soon to improve the accessibility of our web resources, like I was saying earlier. We hope to collaborate soon with the Wayne State Student Disability Services to run some tests with visually impaired users. Oh, and on that note, we also recently started using the tool SiteImprove for our accessibility process. SiteImprove is an application that pretty much automates the process of identifying errors and problems on websites. So it's super, super thorough and super neat.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Laura, Ben? Anything to share?
You want to go ahead, Ben, so we keep going in the same order?
Sure, that works fine for me. So the unique thing about my my background and my education from Wayne State is that while Ford has different areas that do UX research and usability testing and website design. I bring a lot of those experience to my project, and I kind of lead efforts on my team. So the initiative that I was speaking of, creating 3 different tracks. What we do is I'm creating the learning, the online learning modules to go in our LMS system, SABA. However, we've created a learning portal where we're also housing certain elements of that training on our website for quicker access. So over the past couple years, as we've gone through to develop this learning portal, I've incorporated using usability testing, right? So I've conducted multiple sessions with the user to collect their responses, and then based on their feedback, we made some design modifications to improve the usability. So I set up where I had one room where the user was in the room. I created a script for the user to go through the script and accomplish certain tasks. I had a separate room set up with my team observing the user and listening to him, and then I set up a webcam to watch the eye movements so that we would have this information later as we go back and review the information to see what opportunities exist for us to improve on the site. So that was one aspect of using the UX research or the usability testing, right? The other things that we've used in our project, and again, it was based on a lot of the learnings from my graduate studies, was incorporating some of the fundamentals information architecture principles, right? So take, for example, principle of objects. Every site needs to be built to scale and refresh the content. So with that design principle in mind, when we set out to set our site, we set it up so that we could manage the content. The principle of disclosure. What I find often is, especially in the business environment, they want to cram every single piece of information on a website or in a PowerPoint presentation or whatever, when all you really need to do is provide enough so that the user can see it, but then develop a mechanism so that they can, if they want to explore more content. And then one of the last principles, and I think there are 8 in Brown's architecture principles, are taxonomies and labeling of your information, which is very, very important when you're designing a website, and in this case, when we were designing our learning portal. Right labeling and taxonomies are akin to having street signs. It really navigates and tells the users where they are and where they can go. As far as tools for wireframing, we use a lot of the Adobe products. So I've used Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign. What I found out is these tools are very robust and they provide great flexibility for agile development. I need tools that work well for me in the business environment. These tools help to support interactive prototypes, which are great for soliciting feedback from the user. But more importantly, from my perspective, I can design twice, cut once, and I can repurpose a good chunk of the prototypes that I create and use them in other content. So that's how I use in my works, in my space, some concepts or some elements of UX research, and then some of the tools I use as far as UX design.
Thank you. Great.
So,
Laura?
yeah. So I've already talked about our database of indicators. We usually use that, and then we present our ideas in a PowerPoint. The whiz at PowerPoints now. As far as the tools, we've gotten into using Axure for wireframing. It's a little bit clunky, but it's available. I have used the Adobe Suite a little bit to do some work behind it if I have to repurpose part of their existing site. The main emphasis of where I work is to work quickly. Make it as quickly as you can and move on. And that tends to mean that I can use very simple shapes, very detailed, very simple boxes with arrows and whatnot, just so I get my point across. Because really, I am a consultant rather than a designer, and that means that I just need to get my point across. Frequently, what I do is go out onto the internet and I'll find somebody that I know who's doing it well that I need to relay, and I can just do a screen capture on it. We use TechSmith for that. We also sometimes, if we need to show how something will move, we'll capture it in a video with the TechSmith software, and we can embed that into the report. It's all about very quickly moving along that idea of what I'm just trying to cite and show them. And then the designer on their end can take and run with it. As far as other products that we use for our user testing, what we've devised, and this worked out really well, was that we have those surveys that we put up online. And after somebody's done doing the survey, we can say, hey, would you also like to earn an extra $25 or a coupon or whatnot, and by taking our user test. And that's how we get our participants. And I agree with the you only need 5 people to get 80% of what you need. We've actually proven that now over the user testing that we've taken, because some of our clients insist on more users, and since they're easy to get, we've agreed to it, but we still find that after 5, we have what we need.
I wanted to add in one point. When we do user experience, I mean user research, there are actually 2 sides. One perspective is to do user studies or usability testing on the product to find out the usability problems. If that's the case, 5 users should be good enough. On the other side, if you want to study users, find out user behavior, research on users, in general, you would need more users to be involved in the study. These are 2 different types of studies. Thank you for sharing your experience. I have actually 2 more questions, but we can combine the 2. It's just we have after my questions, I think there are some audience questions. I hope you could also answer. I'm sorry. Now my last question, which combines 2, which basically is, you went through the education, you took courses from the school. In your opinion, how much or how important the school education is important to get you started or to be very helpful in your job, in your career, and in the view of the future trend, what kind of suggestions you would make to the education part? Things like something you do in practice, but it's missing from the education. You would wish the school programs can be improved to include certain things like that. If you could share your view, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Well, I know, where I was coming from with my undergraduate education, which was in English, I wasn't familiar with user experience or, usability in general before I heard about the human-computer interaction and the information architecture classes here at Wayne. So, definitely without that, I would not be on this path today. But I guess, past what I learned in those classes, I think what really benefited me was being able to practice what I was learning in real life. I like to take what I heard about further, you know, reading blogs and books and stuff like that on my own. So some books that really helped me along in this journey, besides our information architecture text, which was a really good resource, were a couple books. One is called Lean UX, excuse me, applying lean principles to improve user experience, and then this one by Steve Krug called Rocket Surgery Made Easy. And those two are both really great. I can, put them in the chat if any of you guys are interested. And I guess besides that, in terms of where the field's going, I'm really interested in the idea of universal design as opposed to breaking it up into two parts, one being usability and one being accessibility. So if you haven't heard of it, universal design is a new trend that is basically the idea that when you're designing a product or a website, whatever you're making should be usable by anyone, regardless of age, any disabilities or impairments, stuff like that. So its main goals are to, minimize the need for assistive technology when it is possible, and then moreover, create interfaces that are compatible seamlessly with assistive technology, and basically just make products that are more usable by everyone, just not just people with disabilities. So with that said, I think going forward, it's just so important that accessibility design and the concept of universal design are further emphasized in curriculums that are intended to educate us about serving users. So I guess besides education, I also can't emphasize enough how vital it is to just go out there. And I know saying this is kind of like beating a dead horse. You get it all the time in this program. You just need to go out there and try to get any sort of experience in the field if you're interested in working in user experience. You don't even necessarily have to be working for anyone formally. I wasn't at first. Just try to do anything you can on your own, whether it's working on your own personal projects or submitting article proposals, research proposals, stuff like that, during poster sessions, going to related conferences yourself. And I know that these are the things that have benefited me the most thus far. But yeah, I do really think it would be great if, education-wise, we did have more of a focus on accessibility trends and stuff like that.
Thank you. Thank you, Marie.
Yeah, thank you.
Ben, Laura, quickly.
Ben, do you want to go
Very
next?
quickly.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yep, I had to take myself off of mute. So I agree wholeheartedly with a lot of the comments that Maria made. The only thing I want to add is that, in both my graduate studies in information technologies and then in going through the user experience graduate certificate, I can confidently say that between both of those curriculums, that helped me to land my job in Ford. I've been able to use more than 50 to 60% of what I've learned in the classroom immediately on projects as I was going through them. So I think the Wayne State has done an excellent job of marrying the curriculum up with the industry, at least from an instructional designer perspective, and then from a UX design perspective, right? I think the only suggestion I would make, and this is from because I'm in business, so I'm business minded, is that, for an example, as we go through the curriculums of the courses, to tie the academics up with industry standard technology. For an example, Tableau and data analytics is very powerful. So if the school, if feasible, was able to tie the academics around a trending technology, allowing the students 10 to 12 weeks to get familiar with both the theory and actually hands-on using the software, this will give students a more competitive edge when they're interviewing. And that's just from my own personal experience. and then the piece where everything is going. I think that the whole UX design, UX research, it falls in line with what Maria was saying as far as universal design. I think when we get smart about it and you put the user in the center of your design or whatever you develop, and you leverage different pieces from different industries, this interdisciplinary facet, if you pull all information across, I think in essence, having that shift in your mindset is the design thinking is where you really want to be. So that kind of wraps up what I wanted to say.
Thank you for sharing.
Yes, sir.
Laura?
My experience is a little different because I graduated before the UX classes at Wayne State, and like I said, I had to go looking for them elsewhere. It was just a community college. I think they prepared me well, but I did the first year and a bit at 4C, I did a lot of just being thrown in the deep end and learning actually how to apply the usability principles. I think I have the Polar Bear book, information architecture. I can get the name of the book specifically if anybody's interested. I think I had to almost memorize that book when I was on the job and learning. It helped that I was guided by more experienced people on my team, but I would say it was not the best way to learn this profession. So I would like to say that most of you who are learning it in school, it's a much easier way to learn it rather than being thrown in the deep end. And
Thank you.
We have 3 minutes. I'm going to stop there.
Yeah. I think that's all. I mean, the questions from me. I think you guys answered well, and thank you for sharing your experience and the views. I think there are some questions from the audience. Christine. Hello, Christine. Do you want to take over?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Paula asked if you do any sort of data analytics in your day-to-day work.
Any of us?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
If any
Oh,
of you
okay.
I do a lot of data analytics
So,
in my job. Go ahead, Ben.
No, I was just going to echo that as far as collecting metrics from the website usage and the traffic for who's taking a course or uses a course, using the software like Tableau to go through and mine through the data so that we can make smart decisions on how to manage the content. So I do use it. And I plan to use it more so. Once you put training into place, you have to give it 6 months to 9 months to really get the traffic so that you can see the trend and start to figure out if it was really truly a return on investment. So Tableau is a great tool for data mining, and I think as a Wayne State student, you can sign up for 1 year for free.
I use data frequently because that's the main emphasis of 4C is data, and I look at the trends within. We have a portal where all the surveys go to, and I can actually look up where they're going. But more importantly, once I make a recommendation and they fix something, I can actually follow the trend to see if it's made an improvement. So it's an unusual loop to actually. To be able to see what have you recommended and how does it work.
Thank you.
Hello?
Paula also had a. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, sorry. Paula had also asked a question. I believe it was for Ben, regarding languages, and I believe the question was related to analysis. Paula, I can't find the exact question back to you, but we would do analysis based on world language. I got that wrong, Paula.
No, I didn't catch the question. Do I do analysis on languages?
UX based on languages and world languages.
No. So our area, our learning and development area, they do more of that because they have the capability to transfer or translate into multiple languages because Ford's a global company. However, on my side of the house, while I interact with a lot of users globally, from a business perspective, English is universal. It's a global language, so don't really analyze languages from my perspective.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for your answers. I will be taking this information and we'll take the video and we'll be sharing it on the blog. And we'll summarize the notes of today's event. Thank you to for your willingness to lead the panel today. And if you have any follow-up questions about today's event, or you don't see the blog post, any concerns or anything, you can always email me at av8728@wayne.edu. Thanks again to everyone. Thank you to our panelists, Ben, Maria, and Laura, and have a great week.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you,
Bye.
Maria, Ben, Laura.
Oh yeah, I did just want to say before before everyone gets out of here, I do have an article coming out in Weave, which is the Journal of Web Usability, or Journal of User Experience. It's called Weave, and it'll be out in the spring if anyone's more interested in our method here at Wayne.
What's your article about?
Oh, it's about the style of usability testing that we've been doing for about the past week. It kind of details the process.
Excellent.
Yeah, so I'll forward it to you.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be nice.
Thank you. Goodbye, y'all.
Bye.